Right. Thanks, Vinod. I think we are live now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. I think we have a good number of participants to start the session now. Uh, what we'll do is, uh, I hope I'm audible loud and clear to everyone. Please use the chat window to give me a quick confirmation. The screen would not be visible for the moment because I'm yet to start doing a screen share. I'll do that in a moment. Guys, please give me quick confirmation if I'm audible loud and clear to everyone. Okay, cool. I've started getting some confirmations. What we'll do is we'll start with a quick introduction about myself and then we'll start focusing on Docker, right? The key area of focus today, right? And why it's creating so much buzz across the industry, where it fits into the DevOps pipeline. And then we'll also see if we can do some quick hands-on to give you a high level idea of how it actually would work in a production environment. That would take us roughly around 50 odd minutes. It's already we are already 10 minutes into the session, so roughly around 40 odd minutes for doing this. And then for the last 10 odd minutes, we'll take up any questions. Right, and for questions, you can use the chat window. Right. So quickly getting started about me. My name is Varun. I'm an agile DevOps slash AWS consultant come trainer. I work with the organizations in helping them set up their agile practices, help them move away from the traditional ways of working to these so-called new ways of working or agile based working. Uh, I also work with the companies in helping them set up their cloud, their DevOps pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline as we call it, right? And I also work with the companies in helping them move away from hosting the data on their traditional or physical data centers to cloud or AWS uh, hosted data centers. Right? I have been in the industry for more than 17 years and have worked with a lot of major IT companies in India and outside India as well. Right, so this is what I do. I work as a consultant and I provide trainings on Agile, DevOps, and AWS. I've been doing the training for the last roughly 5 odd years on all these three uh, niche skills. So that's about me. Now focusing on what exactly Docker is and uh, why it's creating so much noise and why everybody is after Docker or after say Kubernetes. Uh, let's focus on that now. Right? Uh, Before we start talking about Docker, I mean the first word when somebody says Docker, the first word that comes into mind is something called as a container, right? Containerization. Yeah, I'm sure all of you would have heard about what exactly. All of you would have heard about containerization or container in some forum somewhere or in a conference somewhere, or one of the clients would have called out that yes, we want to use the containerization concept, right? But what exactly is this
I
container?
think, sir, your screen is not visible, sir. You're
Yeah,
not
I'll
sharing.
start sharing the screen in a moment. I'm yet to start the screen share.
Okay, sir.
Right, so just give me a few moments. Right. So I'm sure you would have heard about this concept called as container or containerization concept. Now, before we learn about this containerization concept, can somebody help me understand uh, uh, what exactly uh, is the concept of virtualization? what is the concept behind virtualization? Can somebody help me understand that? I mean, let's use the chat window. Guys, can please somebody quickly help me understand what exactly is the virtualization concept? We'll start focusing on the containerization concept in a while. First, let's understand what the virtualization concept is, and then once we understand what the virtualization concept is, and then we'll be able to appreciate the containerization concept in a better manner. Anybody, guys? Okay, so uh, the bind environment and platform together, simulating environment required to run program properly, and abstraction, sharing same CPU memory. All right. Okay. Now the virtualization concept. If I were to explain virtualization concept in a simple plain English using an example, uh, it would be. So let's assume that the machines that we are using, the Windows machines that which we are using at the moment, those machines are Windows servers. Right? Just for the sake of discussion, sake of understanding, let's assume those laptops are actually Windows servers, and we have an application which is supposed to be hosted on LAMP stack. When I say LAMP stack, I mean Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. These are the This is going to be the supporting operating system plus the supporting software required to deploy my application. Right. This is the supporting environment that I need. But I have a Windows server. I have a Windows server. So what is it that I would have done before the containerization concept got into, started gaining some traction? What is it that I would have done? What I would have done is I would have created a virtual environment. I would have created a virtual environment. Either I would have partitioned my Windows server into multiple partitions, right, wherein one partition is having Windows operating system plus whatever the softwares I have there, and then other partition having the LAMP stack operating system, LAMP stack supporting environment and software plus my application code on top of it. That would have been one way. The slightly more efficient way would have been to create a virtual environment, right? In which case I would have used uh, some sort of a virtualization software like Oracle Virtual Manager. Oracle Virtual Manager is a very commonly used tool for the virtualization concept. So I would have used something called as a virtualization, something called as an Oracle Virtual Manager, and created a virtual environment. Right. On Windows Server, I would install this Oracle Virtual Manager software, and then using this Oracle Virtual Manager, inside this Oracle Virtual Manager, I'll create a machine. I'll create a virtual machine, allocate certain resources to it. On that virtual machine, I'll deploy my LAMP stack. That is what I would have done. Now, while creating the this virtual machine, I would have allocated certain resources to it. I would have allocated certain resources to it. Say some CPU, some RAM, whatever resources I wanted to be allocated to that virtual machine, I would have done that, right? And now, was there any issue with it? I mean, if you look at it at a high level, there would have been no issues with it. We have a virtual machine. Yes, we have allocated certain resources to it. Yeah, let's continue with it. Hardly any I could see any issues with it. But over a period of time, as and when these resources, that is the your CPU allocation, your RAM and your storage and all these resources, these resources are nothing but money, right? From an organization point of view. Over a period of time, the organizations they started looking at these resources more carefully. And that is it when the organizations started realizing that the resources which we were allocating to a virtual machine, say I allocated 10 GB to a virtual machine, and even if I am using only 5 GBs out of that allocation, that is out of those 10 GBs allocated to my virtual machine, I'm only using 5 GBs out of it. The remaining 5 GBs of RAM or of storage or whatever the RAM that I had allocated to that virtual machine, and whatever the remaining allocation was, that was left unutilized. Right? So out of those 10 GBs allocated, only 5 were being utilized, 5 GBs of space were being utilized, the rest 5 GBs of space were not being utilized. Those were left unutilized. This was a key challenge. This was a key challenge. The another challenge with the virtualization concept was that it was slow in nature. Slow in the sense that the rolling up of these new virtual machines, it used to take some time. It used to take some time. Yeah. So the setting up or the rolling up of these virtual machines, it used the Hmm. Sorry guys, I think my laptop battery just died. I've charged it in. I hope the audio is clear. It's just going to take me a few seconds to get the screen back. So the challenges which we had was the startup, uh, the rolling up of the machines. My virtual machine, that was a bit challenging. I mean, it would have taken me a lot of time to create a new virtual machine and then allocating resources to it. Guys, I hope it's audible now. The screen share will be back in a few seconds. I hope it's audible now.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. The other challenge, was with the integration. Right? Integration in the sense that we are talking about uh, we have been talking about this concept called as DevOps, right? Wherein we need to ensure that the tools are integrated to each other. The tools are integrated with each other, right? And when we talk about this integration, we need to ensure that whichever tools we are using, those tools we are able to integrate effectively and efficiently with the other tools, right? So that integration was also a major challenge with the virtualization concept, as you can see from the screen. I hope the screen is visible to everyone now. Then came the containerization concept or Docker. I mean, the first word that should come into your mind when you're talking about or learning about Docker is the word called as containerization. To get rid of these challenges, the size, the startup, the rolling up of the machines, the integration, the containerization came into picture. Roughly around 5 or 6 odd years back, this tool was introduced and it was using the containerization concept. And containerization concept, yeah, obviously it was to provide or get rid of the challenges which we were facing with the virtualization concept. Right? Now let's understand about containerization concept or what exactly a container is. Then we'll come to the how it solved these challenges. Right? Then we'll come to these challenges again. Just give me a moment. I'll go back to screen. Yeah. Let's understand container. I mean, in simple plain English, there's more to it, but in simple plain English, for the sake of understanding, let's understand container. I mean, literally, when we are moving from one place to another, one town to another, how do the movement? We use a container. I mean, as you can see from the screen on the screen, we use a container. We put everything into a container, properly seal that container so that it doesn't interfere or it doesn't get impacted with the outside environment, and then it's shipped from one place to another place. At the at the destination, it gets executed in the sense that we open up that container and it's ready for our use. Whatever the stuff we had in that container, that is ready for our use. In a similar manner, what we do is we club all these the operating system, the lamp stack, that the environment, the example that I was talking about, lamp stack. If we put everything together into a container, right? I'll put Linux, the operating system, Apache, MySQL, PHP into a container, and then ship that container, use that container wherever I want, irrespective of the environment that I'm using that container in. Right? So what that would mean is, let's again, for the sake of understanding, let's assume that I've created some sort of a package. Right? Let's call that package a container. That package contains Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. And on top of that, all the supporting environment, my actual application code. That is the website. Let's assume that I'm hosting a website, the application code for the website. I'll put that everything together into a package and ship that package anywhere I want. Right. So what I'll do is, let's again going back to that Windows operating system, my laptop, which is my Windows server, I'm assuming that all I'll be required to do is that just execute that package, right? For the ease of understanding, that package which I'm talking about is nothing but a container. Right? Just execute that container by running one or two simple commands, and that is it. With I don't need to use any virtual uh, tool like Oracle Virtual Manager to create a virtual environment. All I have is just this package, which is nothing but a container. I can deploy it anywhere I want, not just my Windows server, but I can deploy it anywhere I want.
Sorry, guys. I think there is some technical issue with the trainer end. We are not talking to him. He should be joining in a moment. Just give us a moment, guys. Vinod, meanwhile, can you check, talk to the trainer and ask him to join back?
Yeah, bro, sure.
We are trying, when we are talking to the trainer should be joining any moment, guys. Just hold on for a moment. Sorry. We are very sorry for the inconvenience. Please hold on for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Varun. This is Naveen from SkillUpRight. I think we had lost you for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for joining back. Yeah. Right. Over to you, Varun.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, guys. Looks like some technical issue with it. We were talking about the differences. The key difference was about the size and the starting up, the rolling up of the containers and the integration. Right? Whatever resources which are being allocated to a virtual machine, those remain allocated irrespective of whether those resources are being utilized or not. But in a container, if you're allocating say 10 GBs of space to a container, only 5 GBs are being utilized. The remaining 5 GBs are available for another container to be used. Right? That's the key difference, and the integration of tools like Docker with another tools like say Kubernetes or Jenkins or Git or Maven, the other popular DevOps tools. The integration of these tools is very easy. Right? These were some of the challenges, which is why container started gaining more. The concept called as containerization started gaining more traction over the virtualization concept. Any questions so far? Let's take a couple of questions. Guys, any questions so far? In the meanwhile, I'll pull up some presentations. Guys, any questions so far? Please use the chat window for any questions, especially about the difference between virtualization and containerization concept. Right? The concept, it's very important to understand the difference between the virtualization and the containerization concept. Then only you will be able to appreciate uh, the movement from virtualization to containerization. Okay. So Ujjwal is asking, how is containerization better than virtualization? Right. I'll again do a quick screen share, guys, just to help you understand. I think because of the connection issue, you might not have picked up everything. I'll quickly do a recap, right, why how virtualization works and why it's better than containerization. I hope the screen is visible to everyone. The virtualization concept, if say we have this Windows machine and the laptops that we are using, let's consider it as a Windows server, and I want to deploy an application, a website which is to be hosted on LAMP stack, that is Linux operating system, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So what I would have done when following the virtualization concept, I would have used uh, and I would have used something called as a Oracle Virtual Manager, a tool called as Oracle Virtual Manager, and in that tool, I would have deployed, I would have created a virtual machine and then deployed all these softwares in that virtual machine, and top of that, I would have deployed my application code. Right, rolling up of this virtual machine, it takes up a lot of time. Starting up, shutting down this virtual machine, it takes up a lot of time. Whatever resources that you're allocating to a virtual machine, let's assume we allocated 10 GB of resource of space to this virtual machine, but only 5 GB is being utilized. Then the remaining 5 GBs uh, are not available for another virtual machine to be utilized. This is where the concept containerization came into picture. Right, containerization in simple plain English, you can understand it in terms of a package. Let's assume that I'm creating a package or some sort of an exe file that I'm creating. What that package would contain, it would contain my Linux operating system, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and my application code. I can deploy it anywhere I want on a Windows server or any other operating server. It would not impact with the outside environment, that is my Windows server. and whatever resources which I am allocating to a Windows, to that container, if I am allocating 10 GBs of space to a container, only utilizing 5 GBs of space out of it, then the remaining 5 GBs are available for me for another container. Right? This was the main challenge. This was the main difference. Right? This is called as effective utilization of resources. Right? This way, I am able to manage all my CPU, my storage, and everything slightly better than I was doing it when using the virtualization concept. Right? Okay, thanks, guys. I hope that clears it at a high level. I mean, if you look at this picture, just to answer a couple of questions in the chat window, if you look at this picture on the left hand side, you'll see that if I'm allocating 6 GBs of space to one virtual machine, 4 GB is being utilized, 2 GBs are not being utilized, then these 2 GBs are not available for any other virtual machine to be used. Right? But here on the right hand side, if you look at it, say the total 16 GBs are being allocated to multiple containers, and if say 4 GBs are being utilized for first, third, second is using 3, and the third one is using 2, that takes us to 9 GB. The remaining 6 GBs of space can be allocated to another containers. Right? So I can create 2, 3, 4, 5 more containers and allocate the remaining 7 GBs of space out of the total memory of 16 GBs to it. Right? So this is effective utilization of resources. And next, what I wanted to cover is since DevOps, these tools are part of the DevOps pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline. So where does it fit into the CI/CD pipeline? CI/CD, as all of us understand it stands for continuous integration and continuous deployment. Right? So where it fits into the CI/CD pipeline, it fits into the deployment phase. Right? So when we say deployment, the deployment of your supporting infrastructure. Right? In our case, the example which we have been taking, the LAMP stack, Linux operating system, Apache, PHP, MySQL, and on top of that, the application code. Right. So this whole forms the deployment phase or the deployment part, and not just this part, but also can I deploy a server using Docker? Right. When I say server, say uh, a physical server or not really a physical server, but a cloud hosted server. Can I deploy that via Docker? Yes, I can do that deployment as well. Right. So I can use an AWS EC2 machine, AWS machines hosted on AWS, machines hosted on Microsoft Azure, or any cloud platform. I can use this. I can deploy that. Right. So it helps us in the deployment phase of the CI/CD pipeline, as you can see from the picture as well. Now, quickly, let me just log into my uh, AWS Management Console, and we'll do a quick hands-on just to give you a look and feel of how easy it is to use uh, Docker. Right. Guys, I can see from the Q&A window there are certain few more questions. I'll come to those questions. Let me just take 5 more minutes just to give you a look and feel of how easy it is to use a Docker container or create a Docker container, right? And then we'll again come back to questions. So what I am trying to do is just to give you a look and feel. I have created an AWS EC2 machine. It's an Ubuntu machine. Ubuntu is nothing but a lighter version of Linux. This is the machine that I'm using. I'll connect to this machine and see if we can uh, run some Docker container just to give you a look and feel of how easy it is to uh, run a Docker container. Right? Just a few commands and you can get it up and running without really worrying about. Uh, Okay, I hope you can see the screen. I have connected to my EC2 instance. This is my EC2 instance. What I have done is this is an Ubuntu instance, right? A lighter version of Linux. I have installed a Docker on it. Docker installation very easy. Hardly 3-4 commands that we need to execute. Why am I using Ubuntu or why am I talking about Linux? Because when these tools were like Docker or say Ansible, the other tools uh, that you can see, these tools like Docker, Chef, Ansible, when these tools were designed, these were actually designed to suit the Linux and all these kinds of operating system, Linux, Ubuntu, Debian, and all these kinds of operating systems. We have the user interface available as well for Docker. Right, but the experienced programmers they prefer using it on say Linux or Red Hat or uh, uh, Ubuntu or Debian, these kind of operating systems. It's very easy to use. Right. Let's see how we can uh, create a container or how we can and run a container. Right. So running a container is very easy. All we need to do is see the first. I'm using something called as sudo. Sudo is nothing but that I'm trying to give it admin privileges. Right. Now, if I have to run a container, what I'll do is Docker because I'm using Docker. Right. So obviously I'll use this keyword Docker. Then I'm using something called as run. What this would do is run that container. So what is the container that I want to run? The name of the container is hello world. This is the container that I want to run. Right. This is just to start with. This is the container. Sudo docker run hello world. Yeah. Now, when I ran this hello world container, it gave me this message. Right. Hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. That means that yes, the installation was working correctly, and this hello world container got executed. What does it contain? How it got executed? It contains a set of code inside this hello world. When I'm running this run hello world, this hello world is actually a container. It contains a set of code inside. Now, I did not write this hello world container. I did not create this. So where is it coming from? It's coming from something called as Docker Hub. Right? Docker Hub is a centralized repository where some of the common containers or common images are kept. Right? Here, if I look at search for this hello world container, This is the hello world image that got pulled and which got executed. Right. Docker run hello world. I just ran this. It pulled that image from Docker Hub, which is a centralized repository, and executed that container. Right. So Docker Hub is sort of a centralized repository, just like we have GitHub for Git, which holds our code. In a similar manner, Docker has also given us a centralized repository where we can keep our images, where we can store our containers, and it has given us certain popular images. It has given us certain popular images like Hello World, or say Windows, or say Ubuntu, or Linux, Apache, MySQL. These kind of images it has created for us. All we need to do is just run this command sudo docker run, and that particular image would be pulled from Docker Hub centralized repository and get executed. Now let's say we have been talking about the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, PHP, MySQL, right? Let's see Ubuntu. Ubuntu is also a lighter version of Linux. Docker Hub, it has created an image for Ubuntu as well for me. Right? Again, going back to that example, I want now Ubuntu for the LAMP stack application instead of Linux. I'm using Ubuntu because it's the lighter version of Linux. What is it that I would do? First, I need to pull this image, Docker pull Ubuntu. Again, I don't need to remember these commands. The commands are available on the Docker Hub. Sudo docker pull Ubuntu. Ubuntu is the name of the image that I'm pulling. Right? It'll When I run this command, it will go to my Docker Hub account, and from there it will pull the image. Where now, how do I see whether that particular image has been pulled or not? I'll run this command sudo docker images. Yes, if I see Ubuntu, it has been pulled just now. Right? You'll see it was created 13 days ago because it has pulled the latest version of Ubuntu from there. How do I run it? Sudo docker run Ubuntu. The container got executed. How do I see sudo docker ps hyphen a? This is my Ubuntu container which just got executed 6 seconds ago. Right? So Ubuntu has now been deployed for me in just by running two commands. I want to now get inside this Ubuntu Linux operating system. I want to get inside this Linux operating system and then install certain few more things like on top of Linux. I want to install Apache, MySQL, PHP, and then my application code. So how do I do that? Sudo docker run -it. That is it. That will take me inside my, see, if you see the prompt, it has changed from Ubuntu to root at the rate the container ID Ubuntu. If I now do an ls, I'm inside my Ubuntu. Here I can install anything I want. I can install Apache, MySQL, my application code, anything. And that is it. My container is up and running. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And whatever container I'm creating here, I can push that container back to my Docker Hub. See, I pushed this container called as Ubuntu Docker Home Automated Build. I pushed that sometime back, 2 months back. Anybody can utilize this container. Ship, build, deploy. So if one of my team members wants to utilize this container now has Linux or Apache, MySQL, everything, my application code, my website code, right? All the other team member would be required to do is just run this command on his or her machine, and that is it. They would have that app, the supporting environment plus the application code up and running. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Now let's start taking some questions, guys. Now let's start taking some question. I just wanted to give you a look and feel. I mean, how easy it is, or to utilize this container, uh, and how by just running a few commands you can get it up and running. How you can effectively utilize your resources. That was the whole concept, and how where it fits into the pipeline, the CI/CD pipeline. It helps us in the CD part of CI/CD, that is the deployment phase. We roughly have around 6-7 odd minutes for the questions. Now let's start taking some questions. I can see some questions in the chat window. How to create a container? See, uh, creating a container, it takes a uh, slightly more understanding uh, of Docker, right? But is it easy to create? Yes, very easy to create. How do I get a look and feel of it? I mean, just create a Docker Hub account. It's a free account. Right? Just Google in Docker Hub, explore it. These are all nothing but images that you see here. See Alpine, Busybox, Python, Ubuntu. These are some images, right? What these images contain is it contains a set of code. So what you need to do while creating a container, you need to write something similar, right? But it's very easy to create. Probably, if you look at the Docker Hub account, the free tier account, it's going to be very easy for you to understand how to create a container. Uh, Venkatesh is asking how to secure our container. Uh, Venkatesh, the containers which we are creating, these are secure in nature. I mean, you can add more security features on top of those containers, but the default security is also good enough, right? Reason, because we are not exposing these containers to the outside world. We have a concept called as port mapping, right? When we want to expose this container to the outside world, then we use that concept called as port mapping, right? That is when we need to create some extra security layer. But otherwise, if you're not exposing your container to the outside world, then the default security is good enough. Dharmendra is asking, we have to mount to create Docker, but how to create in Jumpbox? Dharmendra, can you provide some more clarity? Sorry, I couldn't understand your question. Harish is asking, can we make Docker repository private? Yes, Harish, in your organization, you would be creating private repositories in Docker Hub. Because we get limited private repositories, so we generally use the public repositories. But we have some, I think, one or two free tier private repositories also in Docker Hub. In your organization production environment, you would be creating private repositories, since you would not want to expose your code to the outside world. Praveen is asking, how can IP be assigned to the Ubuntu container and be accessed for further? Yeah, Praveen, this is where the concept that I was talking about, the port mapping concept, comes into picture. Right. So the containers also have certain ports. Right. So those ports are mapped to an outside port of our server. Right. From those ports, the container can be accessed by the outside world. Uh, Chand Basha is asking what actually an image is and what it contains. Uh, Chand, just what I'll suggest is just create a Docker Hub account. It's a free account, right? And just look at these. I mean, as you log in, you'll get these images. Right? These are called as images. In simple plain English, this is nothing but a set of code which has been written, which when executed gets that particular software installed on my machine. Right? So this image, Ubuntu official image, when I'll run the code, it contains some code. This image contains some code inside it. Right? When I'll run that image, when I'll run that code while using this docker run command, docker run Ubuntu, that code would get executed and Ubuntu operating system would get installed. Similar manner, MySQL, I want to install MySQL. What I'll do is I'll use this MySQL image. Again, it has some code inside it. This image has codes inside it. When I run docker run MySQL, MySQL would get installed. So containers are executable. I mean, images. Images. You can understand it's a set of code. When I execute that code, containers get created. So containers are the one which are executable in nature. Praveen is asking, we have to install Docker in EC2 to work with container. No, Praveen, you can install it on your Windows laptop as well. Anywhere you want. Docker is available for Windows. It's available on Ubuntu, Debian, all kind of operating systems is available. I find EC2 easy to use since I don't need to worry about my personal laptop. So I create on EC2. Right. So Dharmendra is asking how to kill a container in Jumpbox. Docker PS to identify and Docker kill will work for. How do we create? How do we kill a container? Or how do we remove a container? We use command rm. Sudo docker rm followed by the container ID. That removes the container. If you want to remove an image, say when I did docker pull, it created this image for me. I want to remove this image. What I'll do is sudo docker rmi images followed by this image ID that would remove this image, delete this image for me. I want to remove the container. Sudo docker rm followed by the container ID. Nancy is asking, so we use virtual machines and create containers inside, right? No, Nancy, virtualization concept is different, totally different. In virtualization container, we create a virtual machine, right, and then deploy LAMP stack and our application code. Here, if you would have followed the hands-on, I did not create any virtual machine as such. Right, I just started running this command sudo docker run and my containers were ready for me. EC2 is virtualization technology. Not really in NC, slightly different. Gopinath, one quick question. As far as containers, I thought we can package an application or a software. Yes, that's how it works, Gopinath. Just remember this image, the container image. Whenever somebody tells you, just remember this container. Right? You're putting everything together. Operating system, all the supporting software, application code, everything into a container. And you can deploy it wherever you want. You don't need to worry about the supporting software, so you don't need to worry about the outside environment. That is what kind of server you have. In case Amarnath is asking, in case of Docker as for PPT, when RAM is not used, it can be used by another container. How memory management? Yes. Whatever allocation, resource allocation that you do to a container, if it's not being utilized by that particular container, it can be utilized by other containers. But in a virtual machine, whatever resource you have allocated to a virtual machine, they would remain allocated to it, irrespective of its utilization. Will it allow to create container if all the container resources are already assigned to same container? So Venkatesh is asking, will it allow to create container if all the container resources are already assigned? No. In that case, Venkatesh, it won't be allowed. Right? So we'll have to allocate extra resources to it. Rakesh is asking how to install my MS SQL and IIS server and host the .NET projects. So Rakesh, what I'll do is MySQL. Just you can use the official images which are available on Docker Hub. Right? Just run this command. Just run this command. Docker. Instead of first do a sudo docker pull MySQL and then do a docker sudo docker run MySQL and then so what is it that you IIS server, right? Host the .NET projects. See, if you remember, what I did was when I installed this Docker, this Ubuntu, ran this Ubuntu container, I used something called as -it. That took me inside the Ubuntu container. If you see the prompt changed from Ubuntu @ to my IP of my EC2, it changed from that to root @ of the container ID. It took me inside the container. Inside the container, I can deploy whatever I want, my .NET code or any code that I want. All I then need to do is this container. Instead of Ubuntu, it could be any other container. Just ship that container, deploy that container wherever you want. Murugan is asking, how does the DB database image work? See, here slightly different in the sense that you can create this, you can do the MySQL deployment by using Docker pull and then Docker run MySQL, but you'll have to get inside that MySQL database and create MySQL and then create your workspace and database. Right? So how you can do that? Docker run -it MySQL, get inside MySQL, create a workspace database, and then the table structure and everything that you want to do. Asif is asking if we can create an image and same image is pulled by another person, does he get the same configuration? Yes, Asif. See, if I have created certain images here which are public in nature, right? If you pull these images on your machines, you'll get whatever the configuration which I had allocated or which I had used while creating these images. You'll get exactly the same. Right? That's why it's these are so easy to use. How in Windows 32-bit machine? Okay, Ajaz, I was trying to install in Windows 32-bit machine. Windows use 64-bit, Ajaz. You can find the installation steps in Google as well. But if you need, I can also share it with you later on. But what I'll suggest is try 64-bit. Praveen is asking, can you give the relation between Docker and Kubernetes? Praveen, Docker, or rather Kubernetes, it's a orchestration tool, right? What that means, it helps me manage when we have thousands of containers, then how do we effectively and efficiently manage those containers? That is what we can achieve via Kubernetes. right? Load balancing, and then uh, uh, automatic creation of containers. Uh, that is something which you can achieve via Kubernetes. Right? We have an inbuilt tool as well for Docker, right? But that is not so user friendly. For Kubernetes, we have a user interface, right, which is user friendly, and it's easy to use, and it gives me more advantages than the inbuilt tool for Docker orchestration. And Nancy is asking, AWS supports two different types of virtualization for EC2 instance, para virtualization, hardware assisted. Okay. Venkat is asking, how can I exit from the container? Venkat, you can exit. I guess you're talking about this. You did sudo docker run -it, and you are inside the container. All you need to do is just type exit here, and you would be able to get out of that container. Just type exit. Ramanesh is asking, can a container be used with all operating system like Linux and Windows? Yes, it can be used with any operating system. Ashish, what's the main use of Docker and how does it help in our day-to-day professional life? Ashish, if you are able to understand the virtualization concept, right, and they understand the difference between virtualization and containerization, then you will be able to appreciate how Docker can be used. Right. So I'll suggest just quickly go through the recording of the session and you will be able to understand. Praveen, so virtualization is inherently more secure as every hardware component is handled with a virtual kernel driver instead of utilizing the existing. Praveen, containers are also as secure as a virtual machine is, or rather, we can say we can consider them more secure. Right? Probably something for a longer discussion, but yes, from a security point of view, we can consider them as secure as a virtual machine is. Okay, guys, any last question? We are already 11 minutes over the scheduled end time. Is there a career path with Docker alone, Shijo, or just a skill? Yes, Shijo, Docker and Kubernetes. I mean, just Google it. You will be able to, I mean, understand how much traction these two tools have gained over the last, especially over the last 2 3 years. Just by learning Docker and Kubernetes, you will be able to, I mean, uh, get a better pay package, right, and get a better career path. Yes, but just by learning these two tools. And are these tools difficult to learn? Probably no. Easy to learn. You just need to devote some time to it. That is it. Vedant, is load balancing useful if all containers are on same physical machine? Vedant, when you're talking about thousands of containers, they would obviously be not on hosted on one single server. They would be hosted on multiple servers, right? So load balancing comes into picture mm, when one of the containers goes down, and then the other container gets automatically rolled up on a different server, or it could be on the same server as well. Pradeep, please share. Yeah, Pradeep, I'll do that. Can you add some steps how to start a Docker with example? Sure, Ajaz, what I'll do is I'll share the installation process as well. Installation of Docker on EC2 machine. It's hardly a 5 step process. 5 steps in the sense that 5 commands are to be executed, and that is it. It's very easy to install. Like in hardly 5 minutes, you'll be able to get it up and running. Okay. So guys, I know we had a certain technical challenge just between the session, but I hope just to give you an overview of Docker, you found this session useful. I mean, it was just an overview session. Right? If you feel that a more detailed session is required, then yes, yeah, you can always reach out to us. Right, in a detailed session, we'll be learning more about Docker, with some more use cases, and the way the sessions are designed is that 70% of the session would be hands-on and 30% would be use cases plus PPT. Right. I'll share the presentation and I'll also share the installation steps which you can use. But please reach out to us for a detailed session and we'll be happy to support you. Over to you, Neeraj and Vinod, for the closure.